Welcome to the Land Investing Business Secret Podcast, where each short episode we talk about the strategies, experiences, and the tools to help you launch, grow, and scale your land business. Learn how to find freedom within your own business, find out ways to build consistency in your processes, and hear how other everyday land investors are winning so you can get to the next step closer to building your dream life through your land business. And I'm your host of the Land Investing Business Secrets Podcast by Pebble, Jesse Kwong. Hey, how's it going? It's Jesse here from the Land Investing Business Secrets Podcast. I've been in communication and I've known this person, our guest, Logan Swanson, for many years now when we first started. He has a very strong branding background, strong business sense. This is a really interesting episode, the direction that we took with this. And it's really cool and refreshing to have a conversation like this. Although we do talk about, the days in and day out of his land business, we also talk about the other things that he's focused on to build longevity in his business. Anyways, I'm going to shut up right now. I hope you enjoy this episode here with Logan. Cheers. All right. Well, I think we're live right now and recording. I've got a special guest here, someone who I've known since pretty much when I started land investing as well. Logan Swanson, how you doing?
Oh, I'm great. Thanks for finally having me on. I guess the embargo has ceased.
I was like, I forgot how you popped up, and I was like, how come we haven't had Logan on before? I was talking to my assistant about it. Yeah, let's get him on. Man, how you been?
Oh, great. Kind of riding the wave, land investing. Yeah, the usual stuff, funding, subdividing, flipping, all that sort of jazz. And started a podcast this last year. Yeah, I think it's about six months or so doing that. And the big adventure this year is we're building a coffee shop in Dallas here. So we're going through permitting and everything on that. So
Whoa, wow,
yeah,
you are such an entrepreneur.
yeah.
I've known that about you. You've always been, doing different. I know you've sort of when you came on doing land. I know you came on. I just remember your branding was really strong,
hmm
and it continues to be with some of the stuff that you have set up, which is amazing. And it looks like you spend a lot of time, working on different projects as well, which I'd love to get into. But that is awesome. I got to ask, what pulled you to the coffee side of things? Have you always been passionate about coffee? And
Um, Passionate, addicted, yeah, I mean, whatever those two words like coincide. But really, my wife and I, we've been land investing since 2018, and we've always just kind of ended up working in coffee shops or at our house. So we spent a ton of time in coffee shops. And there was a one that was opened up here in Arlington, Texas, called Inclusion Coffee. And we started going there a lot. We got to know the owner real well. And he came in one day and he was like, "Logan, I had a dream that you and I opened a coffee shop together. Do you want to do that?" And I was like, "Sure. Yeah." So that's a simple version, but it's been a couple years in the making now. We've almost signed a lease multiple times in multiple locations. But we signed a lease a few months back, and now we're pushing to get it open. It's going to be a sweet spot. It's actually going to be a coffee shop during the day and a kind of a nice restaurant in the evenings. Yeah, a friend of mine is a chef here in Arlington, and he's opening up really cool Mediterranean concepts in there at night. So it's gonna be a badass spot. We're really stoked on it.
that's so interesting. It's not any different from starting any other business. And you're sort of fresh in it right now.
hmm
Help us understand, what sort of unexpected things kind of came about without getting too technical. How come it took 2 years? And how did you not lose momentum for that?
Yeah, lease negotiations are a bear. Um, Especially when you're dealing with like a coffee shop or something like that. It's not like it's bottomless revenue. So if you sign a lease where your monthly expenses are just too high, I mean, you're screwed. There's just no other way around it. I didn't want to be in a situation where, you know, I have a coffee shop, but I'm constantly trying to reinvent things to try to bring in more revenue. I'd rather just have something that operates pretty well organically. So the first few iterations were kind of hampered by us going through this long negotiation process. And then we would come to terms with the landlord. They would issue a revised lease agreement, and they would not just revise what we had negotiated, but they would add other sort of poison pills in there. And we'd have to reread whatever 20-page lease again, identify all those problems, bring them to their attention. They would act upset about it. And that's just kind of how it goes. Like commercial real estate, especially in today's market where everybody's hurting in commercial real estate, even in Dallas, they're trying to squeeze you. So it takes a long time to find the right location and negotiate very favorable terms, which we did. If this is the real estate investor in me really loves the way we set it up. So we found a location. It's an unfinished retail space in the retail. It's in the bottom floor of an apartment complex right on the edge of the Dallas Greenway. And they're effectively paying us $400,000 to build out the space for them. So that's our construction budget, within which we're acting as GCs and paying ourselves GC fees. So yeah, it's pretty sweet. We get paid to open a shop, and do all the fun construction stuff, which I've always been a big fan of. Um, but what we run into in the city of Dallas is, whew, they are tough, and the landlords are tough with their expectations as well. So, but yeah, it's a whole new learning experience. And I've always just, I've learned that things just sort of work out, so it'll be okay.
That's awesome, Logan. It's really interesting. I actually spoke to a couple other land investors who are dabbling into completely different ventures, like yourself.
Mhm.
One in the creative realm, and the other in the digital space. But um, uh, how do, how do you get there? Like, do you how did you get here? How come you're not just focused on land, and you're exploring creatively here? You've done that with your podcast. You're doing things within land. You're funding deals. You're working on your own deals. You've got a great website. I know you're. Yeah, I just feel like you've got an eye and a knack for those kind of things. But what drives you to kind of explore further? And um, yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I don't, you know, we've been land investing now for whatever that is, 6, 7 years. And I, even in the beginning, I don't think I'd say I have a passion for it. I don't finish every day feeling like I just did such great work. There's a lot of benefits, obviously gaining freedom, removing myself from the 9 to 5 drudgery, having creative outlets, that's great. Having limited ways to build community has been great. Um, but ultimately, there's a few reasons that I felt compelled to do other things. One, um, real estate investing is tenuous regardless of the type of investing, right? So, for example, here in Texas, we have a big note portfolio, and a lot of those are on contract for deeds. Um, there could be a change in government overnight that bans contract for deeds. Then what do we do? Then we have to go through this process. Like so. Long story short, there's any number of ways in which there's legislative changes that could effectively crush or quell what we're doing. It's kind of already happening in certain aspects. Every year, county standards for subdivision and developments go up. They never go down. They're never going to relax those things. Um, Real estate is prone to, highs and lows. So, I have 3 young children. I really I'm trying to find ways to even that out a little bit in our family, because that can be an uncomfortable dynamic. So the idea of having a business that's more predictable is great there. Um, and then also, in our industry, land specifically, there's only a couple of ways in which I believe you can actually um, kind of create something that is generational wealth. Um, because in flipping or subdividing or writing notes or whatever, you're always going to run up to this stopping point where the land is sold. It's not yours. You can't keep collecting money on it. Um, and I don't want to get into rental homes. I don't really think I want to build commercial properties or anything like that. So I do need to have something else. I think it's a pretty natural transition to um, business owner from real estate investor. I think that's pretty common. And in fact, I think the next step is kind of collecting businesses. So I think I've learned a lot about business at this point. I've learned a lot of lessons, expensive lessons and painful lessons. So I think my goal would be to just double down on that, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, okay, well, aside from you building your other business, and again, you're very active in land as well.
Yeah.
Help us understand what are you sort of focused on recently in on the land side of things?
Mhm. Well, right now I'm really trying to create a business with longevity. So we've kind of run through some of these cycles now in land since we started. Did you start in 2018, roughly?
2018, 19, yeah.
Yeah, so about when we started. So when we started, it was like, okay, well, you could write, I want to buy your land on a used napkin and drop it in someone's mailbox and walk away with the deed to a property and 10x your money. I mean, that's only mildly an exaggeration. It was very easy when we started. Um, and then things got more complicated. And then, we started kind of doing the we kind of did a lot of what other people were doing. And what I realized is um, what I had kind of neglected was creating an audience that I was going to be able to tap into and go back into over and over again. So, our platform was all about, like, I had this really dumb idea. I wanted to own land in every state. So instead of like honing in on an area or a product or a region, I went everywhere. And then that kind of is what made me start a marketing company and do all these other things. So I'm very grateful for it. But at the end of the day, it's like it's really hard in our industry to hold a national audience and have really any efficacy with it. Um, so my goal is to be um, my advice to us is my advice to new people is not try to go nationwide because it's very difficult. But since I've kind of done that, my goal is to double down on it a little bit in very specific ways. So I don't want to be beholden to the different flows and acquisitions. I don't want to be concerned about if people are texting now or ringless voicemailing now or sending letters now or cold calling or doing any of that stuff to acquire deals. I would much rather be a one-stop shop or a very powerful resource to any and all land investors, or really more broadly, any and all land owners or someone with interest in land. So that's why I ended up coming up with my podcast, the Land Fixer podcast. The whole idea is if you have a piece of land or you want to do something with a piece of land, you could come to me with whatever that is, and I would either be able to assist you with it directly through funding or JVing or coaching or mentoring or whatever, or at least I would know somebody. Okay. And I think by being that sort of jackknife or pocket knife accessory to anyone who has land makes you very versatile. And that actually allows you to sort of get to the point where you're leveraging a nationwide audience. So we kind of built a lot of that through our marketing engine. I've redoubled on that through the podcast and the funding company. And our goal is to take a little bit of a different approach. Like a lot of gurus will sort of come up with a coaching program or something and start selling a coaching program, and that generates an audience and put them all in a Facebook group and then remarket and retarget them. And I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with that, but it's not what I like doing. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to try to be valuable in other ways. So, the sort of content that I like to create is, um, like I started a land news, not really podcast, but segment that I do in my Facebook group, where I just review kind of what's going on in the national stage, any big land acquisitions, unique developments, programs, and things like that. Like, okay, well, that's something that actually would drive an audience that's a little bigger than land flippers. Um, Etc. Things like that. So anything that I can do to kind of pursue, nurture, and add value to a broader community and still keep it land related um, has done well for us. We've never hurt for deals. I don't really have to go through and send a bunch of mail to do deals, any of that sort of stuff. So um, that's our approach.
So now that you sort of become, you use the word one-stop shop, sort of almost a you know a point of connection for a lot of people who own land. I guess that means that you sort of downsized on the marketing end of things. Deals. I mean, deals are pretty much coming to you then, is that right?
Yeah, and you really just have to have the infrastructure and the creativity to make any deal work, or just be very selective, I should say. Like, so a landowner can, well, here's a better example. So through the funding company, I've had multiple investors approach me and say they have a deal that they just want funding on. And I'll look at it and say this deal doesn't qualify for funding. So in lieu of just killing the application, I'll sit there and explain to them, like, okay, here's how you could maybe go back and negotiate a bit of a discount and then it's viable. Or here's a way that you could go and maybe negotiate owner financing and we create a bigger structure and then we could do this sort of development project. Um, but ultimately, through kind of all the different experiences in my career to date, it's allowed me to feel confident in really tackling the sort of things that traditional funding partners aren't going to do. You know, they like flips. They just want to do flips, or they want to do very minor subdivides, sort of in and out. Whereas we're less afraid to try unique projects. We actually appreciate those. And that's kind of where we can work with, investors, but we also just, people have approached me, say, I own this land. Is there anything you can do to help me with it? Yeah, of course.
So people who find you that own land, I'm assuming majority of them are land flippers or land investors. Uh, what would be some other players in that space that typically get a hold of you then?
Well, a lot of people just own inherited land. Um, and the offers that they're getting are from flippers, or they're from, the neighbor who's been kicking the tire for 10 years trying to get a deal on it. So my pitch oftentimes to landowners is like, all right, I don't need to buy your land at a discount to make profit. We can set up a structure where you own the land. Um, and I do the development, or excuse me, paper entitlement work. And when it comes to market, we have some sort of revenue share or profit share or fee schedule or something in place where I'm compensated for my services and you get the best dollar you can for your land. So that's a big draw for folks like that. We haven't successfully nailed any of those deals down yet, but people are coming to me, and I'm sure we will. It's really comes down to finding the right partner who's willing to structure it the way you want.
Logan, can you walk us through perhaps a unique project that sort of maybe came in through one of your channels that you've been focused on?
Hmm.
And how did they find out about you? How did that all sort of come about? Like, help us understand and give us like a perspective of how maybe this sounds really organic to me, and maybe it's maybe not as organic, more maybe it is. Like, can you walk us through that and how did
Hmm.
that all develop, and then how did you guys all sort of finish the deal itself?
Yeah. So the I have a couple of them, but one of them I highlighted as our big project right now. And actually, if you go to my podcast, I have a couple episodes where we're walking through this project. But we had a couple partners that came to us for just funding. I don't know when, a couple years ago, 3 years ago maybe, and I don't know how they came to us. They must have just seen us somewhere. I don't really know. We never did any marketing for our funding company, so they must have just seen me in a group or something, or me on a podcast or something. And we did a couple successful flips with them. That was great. And then they came to me with this project, which was a big subdivide project in Tennessee, and they had no experience subdividing. And we had a little experience with it, enough to know it's a lot more complex than everybody says when they say it's a simple subdivision process. And so they brought the deal to me. I looked at it and I was like, this is no bueno. Like, they were asking for something like 2.5 million cash, and the return was like, if you were lucky, $1 million. Um, and for the amount of risk and the amount of time the money would be out, it just wasn't viable. So I said no to them. They brought it back, kind of revamped a little bit. I said no to them. This doesn't work. I explained to them why. And then I really sat down with them. I was like, look, here's how we can solve this. You take this, it's a 320-acre parcel. It's in um, outside of Crossville, Tennessee. I said, all right, if we can structure this so that they are owner financing the deal to us, and then our expenses are focused mainly on the capex, which is in and of itself like $1 million is about what it's at right now. Then we're actually getting a suitable return. So I could put in a million, $1.2 million and make a million back. Most people would bite that, and the property with the improvements safeguards the value. We would own the property, so all that stuff sort of lined out. It took a while, but it all lined out. Um, and we are now in the sales cycle of that property. We have over $1 million in contracts that are set to close as soon as our development works are done in the next month or two. And everybody's going to be very pleased at the outcome. I'm very confident. But in the process, a bunch of hurdles and conflicts, and the time went further than it was supposed to, and all that sort of stuff. But that's just kind of, I'm like I said, I'm pretty sure they just saw me on a podcast somewhere, and I had the mechanism to receive them, which is I created a company with a partner that has money that funds deals, and so as long as you have those sorts of things at hand, you can do a lot of really creative stuff in our industry.
Sure. How long did that sort of whole deal sort of run for? How many
We're a
months?
year in right now. Well
Okay.
over, or about 14 months in, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Logan, what is 9 to 5 like? I shouldn't say 9 to 5. What does your workday actually look like then? I mean, you're involved with so many things. Can you sort of break down a typical day? Now, there's no such thing as a typical day when you're doing your own thing, but if you had to break it down, what does that look like?
hmm Yeah, well, we've done. I've been better at it in the past, where I have like a very well thought out and executed weekly schedule. So like Monday looks this way, Tuesday looks this way, and inevitably, because we have three young kids. I have a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 6-year-old. So inevitably, I either hit a point where I don't have the energy to keep going on that specific trajectory or whatever. But right now, like a day is wake up, take the kids to school or get them ready for school, whatever. And then my wife and I kind of settle back to the house and look at each other and say, "Hey, you want to work here? You want to go to a coffee shop and work?" Um, most of the time it's a coffee shop. We go to the coffee shop, and if I'm kind of busy, I'll write a list of things to do, which is usually like detailed by the businesses. So it's like, all right, so one company's lane partner funding. I'll write that, and below it, I'll say, okay, for example, we have a closing tomorrow. We have a couple properties we're marketing. We have a couple defaults that we have to issue, things like that. Okay, write those down. And then prime land exchange. Okay, what do I need on the marketing side? We have this coming up. I have a seminar that I'm hosting tomorrow, so I had to like do stuff for a seminar. I kind of wrote everything down. Same thing with the coffee shop. Um, and usually it takes about 2 hours. It's a lot of tasking. Um, I don't have a big business with a bunch of heavy lifting. I have a lot of components to a relatively simple business, all of which are self-reinforcing. So like from the outside, people might be like, "Oh, you have all these companies." Well, land investing is literally just three things, really. It's like acquisitions, transaction, funding, any sort of improvements in the middle, and then dispositions. And it doesn't really matter if you're operating in a funding company, the mechanisms are all very similar. Or the marketing side of my marketing company is just dispositions and the services. So it's like, yes, there's different names and different websites and things like that, but it's all kind of comes down to it's one business that's all kind of doing the same stuff with different flavors on it. Um, and then from there, like, honestly, my wife and I kind of joke about it. Sometimes around noon, we just don't really know what to do. I'll try to work out, I'll do something. It's very common for us to just go to a mall or go to Target or something, or like, oh, we need to go buy fruit, because we buy fruit 3 times a week. So we go do that. Um, and we pick up kids. And that's aside from like date nights and things like that, like that's the day. And then throughout that, just so that people don't think that that's all I do. It's like you're always kind of on this is the downside is you're kind of always living on your phone, especially when you're in this social media world. It's like as soon as you stop interacting with the Facebook monster, it starts, downgrading your access to other people's eyes. So you kind of have to stay doing Facebook things and content things, and that can be heavy. But the benefit is like, if I really just want to take a day off, almost nothing is affected. But then I also don't really ever want to take a day off because it doesn't really feel like a lot of heavy lifting most of the time. But you do get, what I would say is the heaviest thing is you're dealing with finances and a lot of money. So I think something that's maybe understated in our industry is that money and the amount of it moving around, and especially in land, if it's not paying out the way it's supposed to, which it almost never does, that can be soul draining. When you're sitting there and like, like for this coffee shop, for example, I was planning on funding this from proceeds from this development that still isn't closed out. So it got to the point where we're signing the lease and we're whipping our money together. And I was like, well, I'm going to have to offload other properties. So I had to go and wholesale sell properties to get money together for the coffee shop and things like that. So, I think the what you get in freedom can be kind of reduplicated in stress or frustration if you're not good at handling those things. So but yeah, that's a pretty typical day.
All right, I hope you're enjoying this episode here with Logan. Hey, listen, we're talking about businesses, we're talking about land. One of the things that we put together recently is really what we're calling our land business assessment. It's a free sort of assessment scorecard that you can take on the homepage of pebblerei.com. If you scroll down, you'll see a little bar that allow you to take a free assessment to get an understanding of the areas of your business you need to put a little bit more focus on. And we've got resources for those, whether it comes down to marketing, to your team, or building things like operations and systems in place. You're going to be able to get an understanding of where you are. Maybe you're just starting out. Maybe you've got a few deals done now, or maybe you have a business you've been running, but you're still looking to see how you can improve your land flipping business or your real estate investing business in general. Head over to pebblerei.com. You'll find that on our homepage. You can head also directly to it by going to pebblerei.com, LBA for land business assessment. Anyways, enjoy the rest of this episode here with Logan. It'll be interesting when you got the coffee shop. I mean, do you plan to be quite involved in it, or is there managers in place that you're going to have? Are you going to be a part of the operations at all, or are you going to sort of be a sort of a background owner type of thing?
Well, it's gonna be we all have manager and staff, so I'm not gonna be back there like making coffees, but that will be our office effectively. I'm building a podcast studio into it, so I'll be doing like content creation and things like that. Um, Hosting events there. Yeah, but the beauty of it is it closes at 4 and turns into a restaurant at night, so I don't have to worry about late night or any of that sort of stuff. Somebody, and then they're paying us a revenue share to have their restaurant there at night. So that kind of offsets the slowest hours for a coffee shop and actually makes them very profitable hours. Um, so no, when you start anything, it's gonna be front heavy, and then there's gonna be periods of probably chaos and disaster. Like right next to this building, they're opening this 245-acre park right on the Dallas Greenway. And it's gonna be this like big deal, and once that's open, I'm sure it's going to dramatically change things, and we're probably going to be there more and whatever else. And then there's going to be emergencies. The walk-in cooler is going to go down and stuff like that. So it'll exist, but we do have a partner, so those things are kind of shared a little bit, and we do have a manager, so that'll be okay. But
I love your optimism and realisticness as well. Okay, you have, and I want to talk about the things, the different projects you're working on. You mentioned you have a community where you sort of share what's going on. Can you share with us on air right now what kind of trends are you seeing in land right now in general? Anything that sort of picked up by your radar?
yeah, people leaving. There's a lot of that.
What do you
I
mean,
think
people leaving?
land. I think there's a lot of people that were successful when the getting was good, and they didn't have a lot of um I don't know. I guess what I call it is like they don't understand land theory. They don't understand the land investing theory. So they were successfully operating a mechanism from a certain educator and maybe either failed in continuing education or they just failed in continuing passion, which I think is really more of it. It's like the entrepreneur, I think at heart, is the salesperson. And a salesperson is someone who has the ability to be told no 100 times to get a yes and not give up. So, the folks that kind of moved into the industry when times were a little easier or softer, I think are tapping out quietly. I mean, no one goes on Facebook. I mean, actually, some have, but it's not very common for people to go on Facebook and be like, I'm quitting and this and that. Um, but I have had a lot of people ask me about wholesaling their properties, and I've had people ask me to sell me businesses and things like that. So I do think there's a little bit of an exodus because things aren't easy or low hanging fruit. Um, it's a hard business. It's hard money. It's more. Um, there's more adversity in every step. So you have to be like a salesman at heart, and you have to be creative to succeed. So for us, I mean, it comes down to like the very nature of our podcast, the land fixer. I want to be as versatile as possible Because sometimes on a slow month, maybe that income I make is like a $10,000 assignment, or I mean, other days or other months are going to be a big splash of income from some development project, or I sell this or whatever. Um, but to be consistent, you need to be kind of either dabbling in a lot of little things or hyper focused in one thing will work really well. And I did not hyper focus, so I have to dabble. Um, but my advice is actually the complete opposite for new people. I say, really, you want to be focused and you actually want to start a business. Like my seminar tomorrow is on starting a land business with a cohesive brand strategy from the beginning. Like the people who are not successful are the ones who just have generic land business, and this is what I started with. Like it doesn't really get more generic than prime land exchange. And that was intentional at the time, but it's kind of a shot in the foot now because where most people are failing is they're kind of like drifting from county to county and picking up a property here or a property there and never really fully understanding a specific market or a specific property type. So their efforts are never able to redouble. So if you're always going somewhere new, this is the lesson I learned. You're always dealing with a new title company. You're always finding a new broker. You're always finding a new guy to do the survey or put in a driveway or whatever. You're always having to reinvent the wheel every time you move.
What do you exactly mean? I'm really interested in your seminar. Is that an in-person seminar tomorrow?
Yeah, we're gonna TV. It's gonna probably be hosted every month, but this first one is in person tomorrow. Yeah.
Um, when you're talking about being focused, you're talking about like your market, being focused in the market, being focused in your messaging, being focused. What does that mean? And I know you've always had a very strong branding background since you
Mhm.
started, I remember. But yeah, can you sort of explain that a little bit more for us?
Yeah. So you have to be focused in a product, right? So we can't look at land generically. You have to be focused in. Or I'm not going to say like I'm. My suggestion is being focused in a product. So a product might be a specific market or region. So like I know people who are successful, more successful than me, and all they do is desert lots in West Texas. That's all they do. Um, it could be a specific product in terms of the property type. So it could be like I do, 10 to 50 acre ranchette properties through these three counties, or maybe these two states, or something that consolidates a little bit. Or it could be like a specific transformation. So it could be like one of the projects I'm working on this year is putting double wide homes on properties. And that might, if it's successful, it might spin into another brand, right? So I might have a separate brand that's just about buying or developing lots that are suitable for double wide manufactured homes, putting double wide manufactured homes that meet a certain brand standard, and then selling those to the general public. But it could be lake lots, it could be, mountain lots, it could be whatever, any type of asset or property, recreational properties in Wyoming, whatever it is. I suggest that you establish that early on in your business and you think cohesively from beginning to end. So, if you are a generic land company, not only can you not reinforce or redouble value in any of the people or projects or places or whatever, but your brand itself is actually split. And some coaches even suggest doing this. Like you should have a disposition website, and you should have an acquisition website. You need two different things. And I think that's true if you operate a generic land business, but if you are dealing with and you're an expert in a specific product, that is your brand. So like I've been talking to some folks that are putting together a land company, and I said, what are you passionate about? What do you actually enjoy? And they're like, well, we really like going up into like rural Wisconsin, and viewing properties out there, snowmobiling, doing all this cool shit up in Wisconsin. I was like, that's your business. Is there land there? Do that land. Go get that land. And I was like, so you can make an entirely cohesive brand that talks all about being a land flipper or whatever sales company, buying and selling company in rural Wisconsin that specializes in whatever off grid living, putting in a driveway, making sure land perks, doing all these sorts of things and redoubling those efforts over and over again. And there's plenty of land there. There's no reason that you can't make a bunch of money doing that, but it allows you to foster and nurture a very specific audience on the sell side and on the buy side. So the most important thing, like if you want to stay um, solvent and profitable in this industry, I think, is to start with your buyer in mind. So if you know the product type that you're operating in, you know who your buyer is. And when you can define your buyer in this day and age, you can define their other interests. So if I'm dealing with land in rural Wisconsin and it's all about cabins, I guarantee you there's three YouTubers that all they do is they're building an off-grid cabin in rural Wisconsin. Who should you be sponsoring? Who should you be targeting? Your ad spend there is extremely efficient in getting in front of your ideal audience. Then, if it was just arbitrary recreational land company, it's you can't be as targeted. You can't be hyper focused. You can't have your money work as efficiently for you. And that ad you would say put on this cabin video or whatever. That could be an acquisition or a dispositions ad. You'd probably find a similar audience for both. Um, so yeah, I could go on and on. That's what, but yeah, I mean, that's what the core of it is like. How do you make something that's very efficient?
You know, you mentioned how you sort of spoke to a couple friends and what they're into. What if somebody's just completely starting out? They have no idea what they want to focus on. What how can they sort of find that path down the road? I imagine, there's many people who have no idea what they want to focus on. Is there
Mhm.
sort of a very high level path they can sort of take to eventually find what they want to focus on?
Yeah, my suggestion is um, one, self sort yourself out of the business. If you have no passion or interest or any way that you can speak into the business, there's a very good chance it's not going to work for you. Um, so I've tried to be very realistic with people. I do not suggest that everybody gets into this business, whatever. But if you are, willing and able to look at it and say, okay, what is land? Well, land is ultimately like, I don't know. Maybe I do have a little bit of passion for it, but it's honestly it's like a blank canvas. You can do anything with land. So if you're sitting down with somebody, and this is what I teach, like if you're going to start a land company, I say you sit and you write down 5 things that you are passionate about that might relate to land. Well, that's almost anything. So if you eat, food is grown on land, so you could specialize in agricultural land. You could specialize in agricultural land in a specific area. You could love horses. Well, horses live on land. You could really like fine building. Well, fine homes are built on land. So all these things, like almost any interest can be sorted back to find some sort of properties that are associated with it. And then if like you're in this, if you're endeavoring to create a brand that's cohesive and your goal is to be like, I'm the representative of my brand. I'm on this podcast. Jesse, I like you, but I'm here also because I have a company, right? So I'm here representing my company and I can be excited about it. And if you have found like a niche in the land industry that you can be passionate about and you're going on podcasts or creating content, it's going to be actually genuine and it's going to speak to people much more than like anything that's generic. Try to make a good generic anything, and it just really doesn't exist. People are spoken to and understand very specific things.
Absolutely. Um, Logan, thanks for some of that insight there. I think there's so much truth in what you just mentioned there, and I think a lot of people don't look in that direction, and I think, like you said, there's a lot of longevity in on that side of things as well. I'm sure a lot of people would want to to know you and the things that you're doing, and heck, I'm interested in the seminar that you're running, but you've got a podcast, which is the Land Fixer.
Mhm.
You can find that on all the podcast streaming places. You can also find it on your site,
Yep.
Land Fixer. Is it .com?
Yeah, you can go to the landfixer.com. That's just a page on my Prime Land Exchange website, but it's got everything there. You can email me at thelandfixer@gmail.com, or find me on Facebook. Yeah, whatever.
What about your land site? If somebody wants, do you have a social profile for that, or is there's not much on that end?
Yeah, so I mean, Prime Land Exchange has a Facebook page and things like that. If you're interested, just go to my website. There's a little button there that says list your land. It's got all the details there for you. It's $99 a month for 25 listings. We drive creative traffic, kind of like we're not competing for SEO, like paid marketing, which all these other services are. You just can't really compete. So what we do is we do more creative stuff, either through social media, YouTube sponsorship, all sorts of stuff like that. And what tends to happen is we get splashes of viewership on our website. They self-sort, and then we retarget them with traditional methods. Um, But yeah, that's 99 bucks, or yeah, 99 bucks a month, 4.99 a year, or we still have like 15 seats left for lifetime packages of 8.99. You can have 25 listings for life.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Logan, I am super impressed with all the things you've done these past years. I don't know why we haven't connected sooner. I guess I haven't really seen you around in person yet. Did I run
I
into?
don't go to land events. They bore me. I just don't do it. Yeah.
There you go. There you
Yeah.
go. Hey, one book that kind of came up to mind when you talked about collecting businesses, and for those that might be interested in businesses, have you ever read the book by Andrew Wilkinson, Never Enough: From Barista to Billionaire?
No.
It's a great book. He's someone that she shares his short story on building businesses and building a portfolio of businesses. So it's a very entertaining book for those of you guys that are listening. I hope you guys check it out. I had a chance to read that last year. But Logan, thank you so much for coming on here, sharing with us what's going on in your life, giving us some perspective on branding and building, I would say, almost an authority in a space, in a very specific space like you're doing. I really appreciate you coming on. Logan, I hope to have you on again in the near future, and best of luck with the seminar, and keep us posted on that.
Thanks. Yeah, and just to plug your services, I mean, for a while, I was thinking about going down the path that you're on with the cohesive software system, and it is no joke how difficult that is. Every time because I've built software things, we do still have a land selling website that I think is excellent. But when people ask me like what sort of CRM and systems, yours is the only one that I suggest outside of being smart enough to create your own. Um,
I appreciate that very
yeah,
much.
it's I just if people don't know, it is no small task what you've put together. So kudos. That's very underrated. People do not know all the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into creating stuff like that. And I only know this much, and it's enough for me to not want to do it.
I appreciate that very much, Logan.
Mhm.
Thanks for the kind words. Again, thanks for coming on, and we hope to chat with you soon. Take care.
Cheers.
Before you stop this episode or hit the next episode, I want to personally thank you for listening to this episode of the Land Investing Business Secrets podcast by Pebble. If you found this helpful, we'd greatly appreciate any awesome reviews and ratings on whichever platform you are listening to this on. And if you have 2 minutes and wanted to step it up even more and help others, feel free to share this in other Facebook groups or pages or any communities, giving others a heads up of the Land Investing Business Secrets podcast or the specific episode that may help them on their land investing journey. Once again, thanks so much for listening, and catch you on our next episode.